Item number 8, proposed amendment to section 12-2-22 of the Land Development Code, Governmental Center District. Recommendation that City Council refer to the Planning Board for its consideration and recommendation of proposed amendment to section 12-2-22 of the Land Development Code, removing the Governmental Center District. I have a motion and a second. Councilman Terhaar.
What about this?
Thank you. I brought this item forward kind of in conjunction or upon learning of what the city attorney told us at the meeting on Monday, was that this is a now defunct act that doesn't exist anymore, and so this would just basically be updating our code, sort of like what we did earlier with the Auto Theft Act, that something that just needs to be cleaned up. And I understand it's a little piecemeal, like Ms. Myers said, but I thought it was important to do, so I went ahead and brought it forward. Thank you.
Okay. Vice President Spencer.
At this time, I recognize that there is we've got an action item that's asking us to refer this to the Planning Board. So, this is sort of a situation where we can maybe kick the can not only down the road, but off the road to someone else till it comes back. Or we could take this as an opportunity basically to be the time for us to draft language to establish a replacement sort of district using the same boundaries that are designated in this December 1978 map that's provided. I will reiterate that, and I look forward to hearing from fellow council members, but I will tell you, if it goes to Planning Board and it doesn't come back with language that still describes this area as one that is worthy of having the Architectural Review Board's oversight, then that is the sort of action I'll be asking for, and I either sponsoring a separate item, but we have an opportunity tonight to send a message that says we're just going to rename this district. As I said jokingly, it could be named the former Governmental Center District. That was kind of a no-brainer. But there are significant undeveloped parcels in this area that, including, for instance, we have the Hicksar project. So we now have a CRA marketed property that, if we aren't careful in our action, it could in fact be one of those significant CRA parcels that has no evaluation by our trained and volunteer professionals on the ARB. So it's either send it to the Planning Board, or I could make a motion that designates this district and again protects the former USO building, the entire school district site on East Garden, the former John Sunday House site, which could be a site that has a development proposed, say, within a month or 2 months. So, Council President, look forward to hearing from other council members.
Councilman Terhaar.
Yes, I just wanted to mention one thing, and it's, my original intent was because of the wording and whatnot from the city attorney. I mean, when I originally proposed this was come straight to council just for action, but then they told me I couldn't because it needed to go to the Planning Board first. So that's the reason why I'm asking for it to go to planning first, obviously. I don't want to kick it down the road. I'd rather get it done tonight, but I realize that that's our process, and so I just don't want people to think I'm trying to push this off on someone else. It's actually something I wanted to take care of tonight, but was told I couldn't. So just letting everybody know that.
Okay. Councilman Myers.
Well, I'm glad it can't be taken care of tonight because I don't support it. That's the only way I would take care of it, is to vote no. But I think that we need, I support having a governmental district. I support the ARB oversight of this district, and perhaps the oversight should be stronger. But what does this action item do? It sends it to the planning board.
Yes.
What I would really like to do is pull it and allow Councilman Spencer the opportunity to come back with his idea that we could send to the planning board for review. That's what I would rather do. So I'm going to make a motion to pull it.
Okay, we have a motion
And a second.
and a second. Okay. So there's been a motion made to pull the item. Councilman Myers.
Yes, the reason I would like for it to be pulled is to give Councilman Spencer the opportunity to bring it back, the issue back at the next council meeting with a proposal to rename the district and keep the oversight of the ARB and to send it to the planning board for review.
Okay. Councilwoman Cannada-Wynn.
Yes, I thought this recommendation was done because the state process eliminated what was called the Government Center District. Does no longer exist. What Councilmember Spencer is offering is two different things. You're going to have to you're going to rename the district, so he needs to bring that back. So in renaming the district, does that mean we do not have to officially take the ordinance that created it off the books, Mr. President?
I'd have to refer to the city attorney on that to answer that question. Madam Attorney?
Council President, Councilmember Cannada-Wynn, your question is what is the effect of the repeal of the act that created the district as it relates to the district for which we have the ordinance?
Right, and if we have the ordinance now, and it creates a governmental center district, Councilmember Spencer wants to rename the district. Can we just rename it, or do we have to come back and repeal the ordinance anyway and rename it?
Well, you're correct that we would have to repeal the ordinance because it was enacted pursuant to a prior set of circumstances for which the district was formed, and there were bonds paid, and that those purposes are no longer at issue. However, we would have to eventually repeal to create a new district, and we do understand that we have to make sure to have procedures in place so that we'll know with this new district whether it will, whether the ARB will have jurisdiction. So I think there are two separate actions.
Okay. All right, and that's what I feel. I feel it's two separate actions. This is one, and then the other one's creating a news district, maybe with extended boundaries, possibly, and everything is two different things. So when Councilmember Spencer comes back with those items, I'm supportive of looking at those, but I think that this is just two separate things. Thank you.
Okay. Councilman Johnson.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. President. And I will be supporting, I guess it's a substitute motion that Councilwoman Myers made, seconded by Councilman Spencer. It sounds, Vice President Spencer, sounds like there's some questions that need to be answered and a little bit more work that needs to be done on this. So at this time, I will be supporting the substitute motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I get to you, Councilwoman Myers, I won't be supporting the substitute because I believe it's two separate issues. I think that we're sending this to the planning board. We're not taking action on it tonight. It has to go to the planning board, come back to us. In that amount of time, we may have come up with a second ordinance or something to create a new district, but I think it's pretty clear from the city attorney that we need to repeal this ordinance. Councilwoman Myers.
Well, what I don't understand, if it's of no effect because of operation of law, why are we sending it back to the planning board?
I believe this is part of the Land Development Code.
That's all right. I wanted to just do it tonight.
Yeah.
Well, there's no rush to do this. There's no compelling reason to do this tonight. It can all be done. We can repeal the ordinance on the same night we pass Councilman Spencer's motion. And that's how I would like to do it.
Okay.
So I would like to do it all at the same time. repeal one ordinance if we want to, and in a separate action, we can look at what Councilman Spencer brings to us. So I'm not ready to send this any place tonight. It doesn't need to go any place tonight, and so that's my position, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay.
Vice
President Spencer.
Thank you, and I just want to point out, I think, without me having the expertise of real estate law or lease law, I'm more of a lay person that, again, it's I think it's a pretty serious offense to represent yourself as an attorney when you're not. I happen to be married to one, but I just want everyone to think about what if there was this, and this is what I want to be overly cautious or cautious about. If we didn't follow, I think, Councilwoman Meyer's advice or suggestion to allow this to be a simultaneous, basically, action of repealing and then replacing this district with another name and, of course, definitions associated with that, who's to say there couldn't be this window where basically this district is, I'll say, bare, and that someone may be able to offer a legal argument that their projects were submitted during that window of vulnerability in which there would not be the review, the compulsory review component. And that is all the more reason that I support and what I already seconded.
Councilman Spencer, I would agree with you if the planning board was a final authority on this and they could act without council taking action. I think sending this to planning board does nothing more than send it to them, have them bring back an opinion to us. Council then has to vote on it. So I don't see this being a runaway train. It goes to planning board. Maybe next month we send them something with another district, and then you can choose when you want them to come back. We've waited months for things to come back from planning board before. Councilwoman Cannada-Wynn.
Yes, I just didn't understand what Councilmember Spencer was talking about, a runaway train. I mean,
I didn't mean to say
that.
That was
Well,
your neighbor to the left.
I said that.
Well, this idea that if we don't do something or we just let it go, then development in this district is just going to go crazy. I mean, we don't do nothing now. People can still follow the same zoning and what other requirements are and still go and develop.
They have to go to ARB.
Right, to develop. This doesn't stop things right now from going to the ARB. It's just going to the planning board. It doesn't stop things from going to the ARB right now. This recommendation does not stop that process. It just sends this to the planning board for recommendations.
Okay, I have 3 cards in this, but we do have a motion on the floor, which is to pull this item. So if you still want to speak about pulling the item, I would welcome that. Mr. John Ellis, do you want to speak about pulling the item?
I'll wait and see how it
Okay. All right. Amir Fooladi?
No, I'll wait.
Okay. C.J. Lewis. Welcome back, Mr. Lewis.
Thank you. C.J. Lewis, 5941 Greenwood Lane. I want to speak because I'm confused about what the motion is, and I think maybe we probably need to get the city attorney to actually answer an important question. Right now, if an action came up that on some property that was in the former Governmental Center District, what would happen? As I understand what the city attorney has said, there is no district, so therefore nothing in there should be subject to any regulations that are in the municipal code. So I would say that probably Councilman Cannada-Wynn's correct. The appropriate action should have been probably, 2003, to repeal this ordinance, and that bringing something back, which is probably a very good thing, is something separate. But I would just like some clarification as to what you're actually trying to do.
Yeah, I have the same concern that what we have is we have an ordinance that doesn't have the authority that it was created with, because the state law has been changed, and that anything we do with the Governmental Center District right now doesn't have the authority that it once did. So I need some clarification on that from the city attorney also. Madam Attorney? Under the current situation with the ordinance, with the state law having done away with the Governmental Center District, are we even authorized to utilize that Governmental Center District and send things to the ARB in the current time?
Council President, as I previously stated, the Act relates to the creation of a district under the State Act. It was for a purpose to build the buildings in the governmental district based on bond money. The district exists. It is on the books under the Code of Ordinances. The jurisdiction for the buildings located in the district that was created pursuant to the Act based on the boundaries are still subject to the ARB based on our ordinance, and until the time that we revise the code and repeal the ordinance, then the dynamics will change. As I said before, there are two unrelated matters. I'm just, by the way of information, the act that created this district ceased to exist years ago, but the district pursuant to our city land development code still exists. It's still there, and it's still subject to the approval of the ARB and other. We're free to create and rename the district, change its boundaries, but it's quite a there's just two different matters. They're parallel, but I don't believe that the repeal of the state law creating the district affects the existence of this district having buildings that are subject to the ARB. I mean, it doesn't affect it legally, but we can repeal the ordinance and call the district something else.
Okay. All right, Councilwoman Myers.
Okay, this is a very important point of clarification here. So even though what you're saying is that the ordinance that we have that sets up the governmental district and allows review by the ARB is fine, regardless of what the state statute says. Okay?
Yes.
So, however, if we repeal this ordinance, then we would not have the protection of the ARB oversight. So, what I'm saying is, if what we want is to continue having the protection of the ARB, why don't we just not do anything? Why don't we just vote against this Councilman Terhaar's motion, and then Councilman Spencer can just take his time and bring something else to us that we can amend it or repeal it, and then implement something else. But if the ordinance is okay and it still gives the ARB oversight or review, then obviously I'm not in favor of repealing it. So I think there's been a misimpression here that this is just an ordinance that has no effect whatsoever, so we can just get rid of it, we can just clean up our ordinances, and that's not what I hear you saying.
Council President,
Yes.
Councilmember Myers, I would support the course of action that you've just articulated.
Pardon? Are you?
I support the course of action that you've articulated.
Voting
It can remain on the books. We can bring back a new ordinance based on the history of its creation. This district, as it was created and named the governmental district, based on the prior state act, we can do something other than adhering to the name and boundaries.
Okay, I think then what I would like to do is I would like to pull the motion I just made
Yeah,
because it's
withdraw.
not necessary.
Who's the second? Was it Larry?
That was me.
It was you. Will you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
And-
I would like to speak.
Okay, that's fine. But
And-
Councilman
and-
Wingate first, and then
And I will ask council to vote no on the motion that Councilman Terhaar made. Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the original item. Councilman Wingate.
Well, before the item got pulled on the Hicksart building, if that had gone on, that building would be taking place and it would be going along with the codes and everything that are in place now, even though it's in the governmental district. So we have things that are in place to regulate what goes on there. All that has happened is that the law that governed the bonding and everything for that district has gone away. Land development codes and everything is still in place, even though the authority for that district has gone away. So I'm in support of Councilman Terhaar's sending this to the planning board.
Okay. Vice President Spencer.
I hope I can succinctly convince enough of my colleagues to not support the motion as it's been submitted by fellow council member Terhaar. The ARB agenda form, the document itself that is printed and distributed to every applicant, has a paragraph at the beginning that explains the functions, and in that paragraph it contains the words Governmental Center District. So at this point, I think by not supporting this, it just gives us as a council, and it sounds like I've been somewhat appointed to come back with the housekeeping language. But again, that's all not supporting it tonight doesn't put the governmental center district in a state of disarray whatsoever. It just allows me or anyone else that wants to pick up the torch to come back to this council with some housekeeping language. And I think that can be done at this level. Otherwise, the planning board is going to be tasked with having this same discussion.
Okay.
So, again, not supporting Councilman Terhaar's action in no way, I think, should be perceived as stopping business as usual. I just think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. Councilman Terhaar.
Yeah, I think I can sort of put the proverbial nail in this coffin. I don't support ARB oversight of this district. So this district going away and them not having the oversight of it is what I would think of as a bonus to trying to clear up some language in the code. So, that's what would happen, and so I think I can see that that's not going to happen tonight, and that's okay. I thought that this was something I could bring up that I felt strongly in, so that's just my opinion. So I'm anxious to see the vote.
And Councilman Terhaar, I was going to say, I feel your pain because I brought up a similar item some months ago, and after discussions with the administration and hearing from some of the planning staff, I think there was an interest in removing this as well. That was discussed during that meeting. So, Councilman Myers.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Vice President Spencer.
I just want either a clarification or a reiteration. because I can't believe, I've got to make sure what I heard is what I heard. I want to know if fellow Councilmember Terhaar stated he did not want to see ARB oversight in this district.
You heard me correct.
That's what he said.
All right, then, boy,
And that's
a lot of talking to get to where I wanted to get.
That's why I said that would
That's
put
what
that
I
put
just
the
think
nail in the
it's-
coffin.
And I just think it's so.
My own coffin.
Okay, the irony that I want to point out is how many of the successful leaders in this development community seem to oppose this this process of thoughtful evaluation, yet they're the first ones to buy their second and third homes and choose to vacation in areas with tremendous architectural oversight. There's some irony there.
Okay. I do have the two cards. I'm going to give you another opportunity since we're back to the main motion. Mr. Ellis, would you like to speak? Okay. Welcome, Mr. Ellis.
Yes, John Ellis, 714 North DeVilliers. I'll be brief because we've talked about this at length. It's just incredible to me how sort of underhanded this whole conversation has been. I mean, the conversation about how it has to go to planning board for this to be discussed. Well, the reality is Council President Bear brought it up in July. So how is Council President Bear allowed to bring it up, and yet Councilman Terhaar has to go through this whole process of sending it to planning board? It just seems that this is all intentionally confusing. I would just say I wouldn't be in support of sending this to the planning board for the purposes of I wouldn't want to subject anyone else to this lengthy conversation. I feel like if there are those in the community that want to see ARB oversight removed from this district, well, why don't we call it what it is and say that we want that removed? I think by and large it's done in this manner because the majority of folks would not support it. I guarantee you if you talk to folks at St. Joseph's, they would very much be in favor of being able to preserve the history that's there. And if the issue is nomenclature, I wouldn't be in favor of calling it the Bear District. I think I might suggest calling it what it was, the Tan Yards. So I guess I'll just end by saying I hope that we can have more transparent conversations when it comes to development. And I hope that the same fervor that we use to look at ordinances that we need to repeal, we would also look at the Land Development Code and look at opportunities where we can enhance that for our community and not just benefit developers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellis. Mr. Fooladi, would you like to come speak? Welcome, Mr. Fooladi.
Amir Fooladi, 714 North DeVilliers. Basically, my main focus was to make sure that we weren't eliminating the ARB oversight. I think that that's an important, it plays an important role, and I think in our downtown and in protecting developments from becoming the wild, wild west, we need to be focused on thoughtful design. And so as far as what you call it, I don't really care. I just think that the ARB oversight needs to stay. That's it.
Okay. Other comments from council? I was trying to look back at my item from July. I don't know if, I thought I was asking to send it to planning board. I don't think I could do it without sending back to planning board.
I don't think so.
But
I think yours was to go to planning board.
I think it was also, because that's why I was advised by planning staff, is it the way it needed to go. Okay, so we are back to the original motion. That is all the cards I have. Please vote. Passes 5-8. I'm 5-3. Passes 5-3. Okay. So that will go to the planning board.